G'day painters, today we're back to Frosthaven to paint the Geminate. Let's paint. I started by priming these guys with Vallejo grey from a rattle can, then got to work blocking them in. The Geminate character is actually represented by two models, one for its ranged form and one for its melee form. I'll be using the same colours on both, but using the two main colours in different spots to make it easier to differentiate the two at a quick glance. So starting with Diabolic Plum, I blocked in the outer cloak for the ranged one and the inner cloth parts for the melee. With Resplendent Red, I did the opposite, doing the inner cloth for the ranged one and the outer cloth for the melee. I went with these two colours because of the Geminate's cards. The melee forms cards are red and the ranged forms cards are purple. So it's an easy way to know which is which, and it's similar to the cover art still. Plus I think the two colours go well together. For their arms, legs and the parts of the body you can see, the cover art shows them as black. I didn't want to go all the way to black, so I started with Necromancer Cloak. I always prefer to use a dark grey when doing parts that I want to read as black, because then you can easily shade them down. Then for the face masks and blades I used bony spikes. That's actually the last of the colours I'll be blocking in for now. The only other colour on the actual models I'll be doing later. These guys don't have many colours on them, but that's not a bad thing, we can still make them look awesome. With the colours all blocked in, it's time for the shades. I start with purple tone for the purple parts. Then magenta tone for the reds. For these cloth parts, I'm pushing the shade around to avoid pooling. If you get pooling on cloth, it just doesn't look right. Then dark tone for the black parts. I do this pretty heavily because this will make it read as black while still giving us the first layer of highlights. And finally, soft tone for the bone parts, once again pushing it around to where I want it. I don't mind a little bit of pulling here because it helps sell the organic look a bit more, though I definitely don't want too much. Time for highlights. I do want to say right from the start that you could really do the majority of the highlights for these guys with dry brushing. The models definitely have the sort of texture that lends itself really well to dry brushing. I chose not to, mostly because I was just in the groove and enjoying myself, and I wanted to do the more traditional highlighting. Highlighting is my favourite part when painting. The other reason was there were so few colours on these two that I wanted to give the main colours some extra attention to help the model pop more. I still comfortably came in under the 2 hours per model I aim for when painting this sort of thing. So with Magecast Magenta, I worked around the model, picking out all the raised parts to start establishing the highlights. Then with Warlock Magenta, I started focusing the highlights more. I used this to finish off the highlights and the shadow parts, while continuing to build the highlights towards the top and the areas that would be in the light. This is the step where you're establishing where you want the eye to focus and where you'll be placing the final highlights. Then with Spellbound Fuchsia, I finish off the highlights. With this, I mostly focus around the head and shoulders, the areas that will pick up the most light and where I want to draw the attention. I'm working inside the previous highlights, leaving each previous step showing to help create a smooth gradient. Then I did the same for the red. I started with Angelic Red to start off the highlights, working around the model, picking out the raised parts that would be in the light while avoiding the recesses. Then with Legendary Red, I start focusing the highlights, working inside the previous layer, building that gradient. And while we watch me do that, if you're enjoying the video, why don't you give it a like? And if you want to see more videos from me, hit that subscribe button. As of editing this video, I'm only a few subscribers away from 100, which is way more than I ever expected to reach. So why not subscribe and help me pass 100? For the final highlight, I didn't have the next step in the warm reds triad from Army Painter, and none of my other reds really matched the tone the way I liked, so I mixed in some ice yellow to the legendary red. This was around 2 parts legendary red to 1 part ice yellow. With this, I finished off the highlights the same way I did the purples, focusing towards the head and shoulders where you want the eye to be drawn. Then with deep grey, I did the highlights for the black. I only did 1 layer of highlights here because I didn't want to go too bright, and the heavy wash established some nice deep shadows already, so it didn't need too much highlighting. With this, I just picked out the raised parts that are on the top and the outsides, leaving the parts facing inwards or downwards alone. With pale sand, I highlighted the masks and the bone blades. I did normal highlighting on the face masks. On the blades, I did an edge highlight. I liked the way they were looking already, and I didn't want to mess with it too much, but it still needed the edge highlights to really finish them off nicely. For the ranged guy, he's sort of like building up power in his hands to blast someone. So for this, I decided to go with Bright Sapphire, and I carefully blocked in the parts between his hands. I also did both of their eyes with this. Then with Crystal Blue, I did just the edges of the eyes, leaving the Bright Sapphire showing in the middle. For the power they're building in their hands, I did the Crystal Blue around the edges of the previous step, and also on the hands to create some OSL to help sell the look of them building up power to blast some poor fool. And that was them finished. The bases have a lot of rocks and gravel on it, so I blocked it all in with deep grey. Normally I'd love to dry brush this, but with the model already attached, you can only really hit the parts on the edges, and I don't think it's worth highlighting each rock individually for the base. So the next step was to give the bases a heavy wash with strong tone. I used a brown wash here to make the rocks look dirty, as if they're actually part of the ground, and to also give the grey a different finish to the grey highlights on the model itself. I really do think these bases could have used a dry brush afterwards, but that's the downside to models already being attached to their bases. And then of course, I finished the rims with black. And we're done! I'm really happy with how these two came out. They have so few colours on them, but I don't think it's hurt the end result at all. I think they look great, and I hope one of my party chooses to play these guys when they prestige. As I said earlier, I aim for around 2 hours or less for my Frosthaven models, and I finished these two in under 4 hours total, so I'm happy with that time. I hope this has helped you for painting your Geminate pair, or maybe given you ideas for some other models. If you want to see more Frosthaven models painted, or just see what else I paint, why not hit the subscribe button? Give the video a like while you're down there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.